So we're back on Herp House Rock. We got another great episode for you. We have Josh from Josh's Frogs here. He's been in the hobby for quite some time. He took some major turns, and he works with some of the rarest frogs in the world. So stay tuned. All right.
Cool. So,
Dave, go ahead.
Let's do it. Frogs. Was that the first thing you worked with in the hobby, or was that something that kind of came along a little later?
Well, that's the interesting part. Frogs were the first the first pets that we kept as kids. So we grew up by a swamp. My mom was always kicking us out and saying, hey, no more video games or no more fighting with your brothers. Go outside, go to the swamp. And so we caught a bunch of frogs. We'd also catch some turtles and snakes. And the rule always was that we could bring them home for one night, keep them, and then we'd have to return them the next day. So I don't know where my mom came up with that rule, but it worked out perfect. We learned enough not to kill them for one night, and we brought them back the next morning and let them go. So as far as like keeping animals, like frogs were definitely the first. But when it came to exotic animals, I was drawn to the snakes first before it was the frogs. So definitely frogs first as pets, but in the exotic market, it was definitely snakes.
And what kind of snakes were you into?
I kept as a junior high school student. I had one boa and a red tail, and then one ball python. So had the two snakes in my room. That's what I kept.
Cool. So what was the first thing you produced in the hobby?
In the hobby, I got rid of the snakes to go to college. And so after I got out of college, spent 1 year as a bachelor, and then the very next year I was married. And, my wife and I didn't have very much money at all. She was a substitute teacher. I was a pastor at the time. And I said, hey, I'd really like to keep something, but we don't have much money to put together. And so I started doing some more research, and I found out about poison dart frogs. And I started doing a bunch more research, and then I realized that, since they eat fruit flies, you need these 32-ounce cups to feed them. And the manufacturer of those cups was just down the road, about 20 miles from where I was living. So I hatched this ingenious plan that I'd buy a pallet worth of these cups, and I'd throw them in my apartment bedroom, and I would sell off the extra cups, and I'd use that to buy my first dart frog tank. And so it was dart frogs from there, and that's what my first time breeding anything. So having one ball python and one red tail, no breeding happening there. So poison dart frog is definitely the first frogs or first any herp that I was breeding.
So let me get this straight. You're like, hey, I really want to keep something cool, and there's a company down the street that sells the plastic cups that the fruit flies are sold in. Yeah. And you're like, I got it. Yeah. This is exactly what I want to do. I'm going to breed fruit flies and sell them in these cups because I want to start keeping some frogs.
Yeah, so if you've ever seen the 32-ounce cup boxes, they're like 2 feet tall by 2 feet wide and 10 inches. So it literally was a fort inside of our apartment bedroom, lining the walls with these cups. Because we were in an apartment, I didn't have anywhere to put them. So yeah, I was all buying a bunch of those and cramming them in my car, driving them home, and unhunking them up the stairs into the apartment and throwing them in the bedroom, and then selling off sleeves of 50 or 100 of them at a time to anybody who would buy them.
That's funny. So what was your first frog?
First frogs that I ever got were the Dendrobates tinctorius citronella. So blue legs with a citronella yellow back. Those were the first poison dart frogs I ever got.
Okay. So I just want to backtrack just here, and I want to talk a little more about dart frogs. No, that's extremely interesting. I mean, it's not necessarily a paperclip into a house story because there was no bartering involved, but right away you trying to build capital to start what you were doing. You found something that somebody needed. You luckily had the resource right down the road, and you went with it, which is awesome. How long did it take you to go through that first pallet?
So literally, when I say my wife and I had no money, we had no money. So I put it on the credit card, and I had 45 days before that payment was due, that I had to sell off those cups and lids. And so luckily I was able to do it in that 45 days. And then I was able to do another round after that and get another tank. So it was that 45-day turn. I mean, we didn't have two pennies to rub together. It all started from that.
That's great.
I think that's humbling, honestly. And, I think some of the best people in the hobby, especially early on, were the people that really had no choice but to be great because you just put all your money into it.
Yep.
So it is all or nothing for some of us. So, no, that's awesome. Now, frogs. So I want to hear all about dart frogs. Like, I've always been fascinated by them. At some point, I'm sure I'll have some kind of bioactive setup in the house. Yeah. I'm always scared shitless I'm going to kill frogs. I think dumpies are the only ones I ever felt safe enough to have, and I had them for a little bit. But no, yeah, I'd love to hear a little more about your process early on. Maybe some of the things you learned how to do it wrong, how you learned how to do it right.
Yep. So I got into the hobby in 2003. So by then, most of the hobby had been figured out. So poison dart frogs had been coming in for decades before that. But it wasn't until late 80s, early 90s that people realized, hey, these frogs aren't lasting very long. We need to change the way in which we're keeping stuff. And, some of the European influence where people were trying to keep animals naturalistically, that got translated over into the U.S. hobby for poison dart frogs, and it was like flipping a switch. Like as soon as you stopped like trying to keep them on wet paper towel in these sterile environments, as soon as you started like, hey, let's actually have some substrate here and let's have some live plants, it was like night and day difference as far as success and not only longevity but just an ease of breeding. Like you set them up correctly. The males and females are just ready to breed, and they just breed without much of any type of temperature changing or weather changing. They're just designed to breed on a regular basis, and they became super easy to breed and super prolific and long-lived. Like I ended up very early in the hobby buying some poison dart frogs that somebody said, hey, yeah, I've had these for 20 years. So, I mean, these are like frogs that are living decades and decades, and it took us a while as a hobby to come around to keeping them naturalistically. But once we were able to stumble upon that little gem, that it changed the world of poison dart frog breeding. And I think a lot of the naturalistic stuff that we're seeing and as far as other animals now is coming really out of that. The success that people had with poison dart frogs, and that they were totally unable to keep them without doing it naturalistically. They just wouldn't survive, wouldn't thrive.
Wow.
Okay.
So before that, people were just keeping them on wet paper towels and in like fish tanks.
Yep, exactly. And in fact, a lot of it comes from the fish hobby. Some of the very first poison dart frogs brought into the hobby were all on fish shipments. So they're all discus breeders that were bringing them in as miscellaneous frogs on the shipment. So a lot of the times trying to keep them very sterile on wet paper towel in a terrarium and not doing it naturalistically.
Wow.
Interesting. So a lot of people I'm sure that are listening to this don't know anything about it, and really I'm just asking for myself right now. But the process after you have them together, are you collecting the eggs out of the tank? Are you letting them get to tadpole form before you separate them? Tell us, I want a total breakdown here, man.
Yeah. So poison dart frogs are what are called leaf litter egg layers. So in the wild, they're laying their eggs in between layers of leaves on the rainforest floor. So in captivity, we found that to mimic that, we want them to lay on a petri dish so that we can extract the eggs. And so somebody had this ingenious idea of taking a coconut, and you guys have all seen it, where they half it and then make a little doorway on it. And that has just been the staple in the dart frog hobby. Really, anything that you can cover up a petri dish will lay right on that petri dish. And so we will harvest eggs 2 to 3 times a week out of the tanks. So we'll take the eggs out. We'll incubate those about 14 days. And when I say incubate, I mean putting them in a container in room temperature. And as soon as they start hatching out, we're putting them in cups. And a lot of tree frogs will have large clutches. Poison dart frogs, on the other end, will have anywhere from 2 to maybe a dozen eggs at a time, and they're all cannibalistic. So in the wild, it's much more complicated. So the male will actually call, the female will lay the eggs, the male will fertilize the eggs, and then once the male will actually take care of the eggs He'll actually urinate on them to keep them moist and keep bacteria and fungus from growing on them. And then he'll transport the tadpoles to bodies of water. And so if he has to double up on some of those, the biggest tadpole will eat his brothers and sisters. So in captivity, we just separate all the eggs out into individual cups as their tadpoles. And they're tadpoles for about 3 months. Once they pop out back legs and front legs, we tip the cup. It's kind of interesting. I'll have to show you guys a picture sometime. But you use a wire rack, and if you don't fill the cup all the way, and you put the corner of the cup down in between some of the bars in that baker's rack, it sits at an angle. And you just wait for the frog to come out of the water. So as far as breeding poison dart frogs and caring for tadpoles, it's really not that hard. It's not that difficult. It's just time intensive.
Yep. I saw Mike Novi's collection years ago, just being in Cleveland, and even talking to him, and quite a bit of diversity over there.
Yep.
I don't think that guy's ever going to be able to take a vacation. Like, if you're going to work with frogs, it seems, not with you, it sounds like you might have a little more freedom with bioactive and all that good stuff. But with him, it sounded like a 2-day vacation, or even go to Tinley, was just like nerve-wracking the whole time.
Yeah, a lot of frogs, it's difficult to keep them bioactive, or at least bioactive in the size enclosures that make any sense for us. So a lot of those larger tree frogs, they're just producing so much poop. Poison dart frogs, on the other end, they eat such small prey that the waste buildup in the tank isn't that large. And so the rule of thumb is 1 frog per every 5 to 10 gallons. And so we do pairs or trios in 20 longs, and we'll change out the substrate every few years. So the rest of it just utilized by the plants.
Oh. Do you run into any cannibalism with the adults?
Well, with the adults, it's more wrestling and territorial issues. So like I said, some of the tanks will keep trios in if that seems to be working. But we'll raise groups of frogs in 4 or 5, and usually what will happen is we'll notice some aggression, and then that's when we try to separate them out. But a lot of times, if they're grown up together, they won't be as territorial. But for us, in trying to maximize breeding, we want to separate them out because in addition to being territorial and aggressive, the females can eat each other's eggs. So that's very common with species like the leucomelis, the orange and black poison dart frog. You'll get these females that are just like their bellies are just rolling on the ground because all they're doing is laying eggs and eating each other's eggs all day long. And so, separating them out into pairs or trios usually works a lot better that way than keeping them in groups.
Okay.
So, and silly question that I'm sure most of our listeners know, but so they're poison dart frogs, and people, they'll come to us and say, and they'll say to me, and I'm not a frog guy yet, but so isn't it dangerous to touch them and things because it's poison and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, so I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer about why and how that doesn't happen. I know that's maybe a fairly common thing, but.
Yep. The toxicity in the wild is based on what they're eating. So they're eating ants and beetles that are eating poisonous plants in the wild. So when they don't have access to that diet, they lose those toxins, and they lose them pretty quickly. It's pretty amazing. They're not storing much of that for whatever reason. So we've had fresh imports in before, and if we're foolishly dealing with them without our gloves on or anything like that, every now and then you'll feel a little tingle or something like that, but nothing near what it would be like in the wild. Like the terribilis poison dart frog, they say that just touching that frog in the wild and then touching your eyes or your mouth, you'd be gone. So nothing like that at all in captivity, even on fresh wild caught. They lose it so quickly. It's so bizarre.
And do they have any negative effects from not having that? I mean, aside from predatorial, but I mean, activity.
Yeah, and in fact, it's a good thing. Like the thing that makes poison dart frogs so popular is that they're a great display animal. The whole idea that they still think that they're poisonous allows them to be right out in the open without fear of being preyed upon, and so they actually make really good captives in that regard. Whereas most other frogs, for the vast majority of frogs, their main defense mechanism is actually camouflage, and so they're used to hiding and being in a hidden spot. Whereas poison dart frogs, with their defense mechanism being toxicity, they're out in the open all the time. So that's a good aspect of it. Negative aspects of it We're not sure about anything. It doesn't seem to affect any of their longevity. Like I said, we've had poison dart frogs for decades without any ill effects. But
so in the wild, do you think that diet is more based on just the fact it's a little easier, slower moving, ground level? It's just what's in their territory, so that's what they're going for?
yeah, and they're specialized. So like you'll have a poison dart frog. Some of them will morph out of the water maybe a ½ inch, and then full size will be 2.5 to 3 inches, and they'll eat the same size prey item their entire life. They'll most poison dart frogs will not touch anything over 1/8 of an inch. So you need either fruit flies or freshly hatched pinhead crickets. Even at a 2.5 inch tall frog or long frog, they won't eat anything bigger than 1/8 of an inch. There's some exceptions to that, like some of the Phyllobates, Terribilis. They'll eat something a little bit larger, but for the most part, all those poison dart frogs will eat the same size bugs their entire life, whether they're a ½ inch out of the water or whether they're 2.5 inches as an adult.
Okay. And last thing about the breeding process, how many clutches will a female have a year?
It really depends on the species. Most species will take breaks during the year. The biggest example of that is Leucomelis, which are probably one of the most common poison dart frogs, or most popular. They tend to be very seasonal and breed 2 seasons out of the year and spend another half of the year not breeding. But there are a lot of Tinctorius that'll breed pretty much year round. Every 10 to 14 days, they'll lay a clutch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen a few mutations pop up over the years, and it seems like a lot of people in the community kind of frown upon it or don't really get excited about a oddball popping up. Is that common, or is that just a few people that like to voice their opinion?
I would say it's probably a mix of the two. Like I think it's fairly common, and there's also a very vocal minority that would think that any type of color mutation would be like the end of the dart frog hobby. So, for us personally, like we try to shy away from that. It has a horrible stigma in our hobby and would not be good for us and our reputation to be pushing a lot of that stuff. But it seems to have changed. Over the last few years, we've gotten some new blood into the hobby, and some of that new blood has resulted in some albinos and other types of color morphs, and that's been a little bit more well received because it really isn't line breeding for those traits. We're seeing that in F1 populations, and so it's been a little bit more received. But I think the hobby as a whole, I think even goes back to the naturalistic terrariums, like the whole push or whole mindset behind the hobby is creating something naturalistically a part of the rainforest. And so like selectively line breeding for something that would never naturally survive that long in captivity is kind of seen as cheapening that hobby. But I think they're coming around to seeing like, hey, it's just unique and part of this oddball that spits out every now and then. So there's some of that that's kind of frowned upon. But on top of that, there are some other traits that are a little bit more well received in the hobby. So like on some of the cobalts, they'll have these little wrist yellow lines on those. Those can be sought after. Some of the Azurias can have reduced blacking on them or finer spots on those. And then some of the Leucomelis can have finer spots. Those kind of things, those kind of traits are more desirable. Some of the albino type frogs, those are usually not as well received in the hobby as they are in other parts of the reptile and amphibian hobby.
Okay. Now, is it really truly fear to make a weaker animal, and that's the big reason to stay away from it? Or is there a little bit of they don't like what comes with a breeder mentality when it comes to mutations?
Well, I think that there also is some kind of like, if you want to call it highbrowism to poison dart frog, that like, hey, it's about keeping it natural. It's kind of funny, like dart frog prices have been the same for like decades, and people frown upon anybody changing the pricing, even though it makes no sense. For instance, like the Leucomelis, that probably are some of the frogs that breed the least regularly of any of the poison dart frogs, tend to be one of the cheaper ones, and you can't really change that or else people get upset. But like, it doesn't make the pricing has nothing to do with how fast or how prolific or how common they are. It's just these prices have been set forever. So I think it's a lot of people just set in their ways, and A lot of the people that keep poison dart frogs, that's their entry into the hobby. They're not usually people transitioning from other parts of the hobby. And so I think it just has a different reputation than some of the other parts of the reptile and amphibian hobby have. Even down to other frogs, like there's a ton of red eye morphs and people love them. They think they're the best thing ever. But like if something like that were to happen in poison dart frogs, people would probably be less receptive to it.
Wow. And so I was just doing a quick math. You were saying that, if the common ones that you're using are producing every 14 days or so, and they produce, 6 to 12 babies or something like that on average, you could get over 200 eggs a year.
Yep.
That seems, that's pretty good. That's a good deal. If you wanted to have, let's say that I wanted to have a cool terrarium set up.
Yep.
And I didn't really care to breed that much. I just want them to hang out.
Yep.
Should I get all males? Should I get all females? Should I get mix a couple of different species? What's your pick on the better setup?
I always recommend, and people I think have the best success when they're keeping to the same species. Like I talked a little bit about the territorial issues with poison dart frogs. That's just exasperated when you have different locales there. They're just not used to seeing those types of frogs, and there can be some territorial issues. So I recommend sticking with the same species. And then on top of that, I do recommend that people do their best to get different sexes. Because I think part of like what makes poison dart frogs so cool is the parental care. So like if you were to set up a terrarium and have some place of standing water, and it doesn't have to even be that amount of water, that much amount of water in the terrarium, you'll get to see them laying eggs, the male transporting the tadpoles. You'll see a lot of cannibalism of the tadpoles, and be able to every couple of months see 1 or 2 froglets hop out of the terrarium. And I think watching that whole entire life cycle is one of the things that makes poison dart frogs so cool, as opposed to some of the other animals that we have in our hobby, where there's a lot more work involved on our end to get them to breed. Whereas in that, you're seeing a lot of parental care by the mother and a lot of parental care by the father as well. And I think that's the best way to enjoy poison dart frogs, is to see that whole life cycle right there inside the tank without you doing anything to get them to breed or helping them out in that process. I think that's the best way to do it.
That's awesome.
Have you found with the naturalistic setting, them just doing it themselves, couple babies come out of the water, jump in, do you find it any more communal when it's that way, or do they still run into territorial issues?
They tend to be, if you're growing the frogs up together, they tend to not be territorial when they're adults. So right now, when poison dart frogs come out of the water, they're not sexable, and they tend to not be sexable on most species until they're about a year old. And so then they all of a sudden show all these different signs that you can tell whether they're males or females. So females tend to have wider hips so they can pass the eggs. So you'll see the frogs, 9, 10, 11 months, they all look like they're male hips, and then all of a sudden, boom, she spreads out and it's a female. Same with the males, tend to have, on a lot of species, tend to have wider toe pads. They're all the same, and then suddenly at a year, they all split. So there's even some crazy conspiracies that they might all be the same sex, and that it's partly environmental that they, pop into being a male or female at that time. But when you raise them up together, you tend not to have the issues of being territorial. Doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but for the most part, you can count on not happening. But you're going to take sexed adult animals and put them together. More often than not, you'll see a lot of aggression, and they'll grab each other and body slam each other and jump on each other. It's pretty intense.
And that might be what we're going for.
Yeah.
You're really not selling me the other way there on this one. You get a couple of dart frogs, you put them in a tank, they start, they produce a couple babies, they have a couple wrestling matches. Great. Ants Canada here, but with frogs.
Yeah. So, kind of going back a little bit, not so much with mutations, but is there much line breeding in frogs based on maybe color or just patterns? Like, do you have groups that just tend to do better and make better looking babies, or is it extremely variable? Is there no no really way to pinpoint things.
So I guess if you look at the hobby as a whole, there still is a lot of I wanted to say indirect, but like accidental line breeding. So what happens is people will usually like, hey, somebody breeds a bunch of frogs, they have a bunch, and you're like, hey, yeah, I'd like to have 3 of those. So you grab 3 of those, you put them in your tank. After a year, they start laying eggs, and without even thinking, you're just breeding siblings together. So in our hobby, there was a lot of that. But when it comes to people such as us that are doing it professionally, like the more genetic diversity we can get, the bigger the clutch sizes, the more healthy the tadpoles and froglets. And so we're trying to, as much as possible, outcross and find unrelated animals to breed together, just because it makes so much more sense, and just the amount of manpower we're going to put into it, and time and space for them to produce this most amount of babies. So when it comes to line breeding, some of that, like, it gets to the point where people get confused on whether that's a specific location of frogs that looks like that, or whether that's just a few individuals in that location that look like that, and we're just going to breed those together. So you have some frogs where you would say, hey, that's all Azurius are Azurius. It doesn't really matter. And then you have some people that say, hey, no, those sky blue Azurius, they came from this area. They're different than all the rest of the Azurius, so I can breed those all together. So it's kind of controversial, I would say, in some aspects. But for the most part, the people that are really serious about it really understand that, like, you can't just continually breed siblings together generation after generation. You got to cross that out in order to get bigger and larger clutch sizes. Because I think, going back to the other part, like line breeding for specific traits, for the most part, is kind of frowned upon in the hobby. And it doesn't really change pricing that much.
So do you find that there's not enough blood to outcross in the United States?
There is not, on a lot of species, there isn't a lot of there's a lot of founding population in those. Most of the bread and butter, the consistent ones, there is a lot, and every now and then there's some that are brought into the country to add to that bloodline. So the main staples, yes, but on some of the more rare poison dart frogs, some of them might have only started with a half dozen animals to begin with. And I'm sure we have other examples in the reptile industry of that being the case too, as well, too, sadly, because we know that, especially for us in poison dart frogs, the colors are indicative of locations, and some of these locations are very much in danger of not existing anymore, if not already don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So with that, I take it the importing of dart frogs is almost non-existent, or how is that? What's that whole process?
Poison dart frogs tend to be, and frogs in general tend to be more sensitive to the importation process than a lot of reptiles. So thankfully, more and more of the amphibian importations are happening in ways in which getting animals to specific people that want to work with them. So like we'll work with importers to get a shipment of poison dart frogs in, instead of somebody in Miami getting a bunch of poison dart frogs and then trying to figure out where to move them onto. They're just a little bit easier to get them in the hands of people that can breed them and establish them in the hobby.
So not so much legalities, but more just the fact that it is a delicate species and makes it very hard to ship long distance.
Yeah, that's part of the issue, and I don't know if we want to get on that tangent, but like, the numbers that red-eye tree frogs come in are just astronomical, and so we have all these issues of them trying to reach their quotas by holding animals at the port, and so the order might be thousands and thousands of red eyes. It takes a long time to collect that many red eyes, so you have some that you first collected where you're still trying to get the numbers up, and then those are getting shipped to Miami on a slow train, and so the numbers of red eyes that are quote unquote imported into the United States are staggering, and we're just not seeing every household in America have a red-eyed tree frog, because just not many of them are making it. Unfortunately, that process just doesn't work. I think it's a little bit different with some of the other reptiles in the importation. They're just much hardier. They're not as sensitive to conditions as some of the frogs are, and so for us as a company to say, hey, in order for us to continue to have the animals that we have to invest in captive breeding and have to invest in getting bloodlines to the right people that can continue to to maintain populations that we can have these frogs for decades from now instead of bringing in. I mean, some of the quotas are ridiculous, like 40,000 red eyes a year. Like, there's just no need for that type of influx of new animals every year.
I agree.
What do you think is the mortality rate?
If I had to guess, I would guess after a year, probably 100 to 1. So 99 are dead, one's alive after a year. Yeah, it's not good. Not good.
Wow. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even if they do end up making it to an end user, somebody's bedroom, like, just the chances of that frog's going to be around a year after everything that it just endured is pretty small. Especially when, I mean, you've been in Mike Novi's place. Like, red eyes are not that hard to breed. It's just really hard to do it in the numbers that most pet stores are going to want. So
yeah,
but we as a hobby are working on that.
Good. So have you had opportunities to work with anything species-wise that no one else had? Like, just came in and you got your hands on it for anybody else and got a chance to figure it out?
We every now and then, especially the importers, a lot of times, they get something and they're like, we don't know what it is, and we can be interested in it. Sometimes, like in those types of situations, you get 4 or 5 of them in and they're all males or they're all females. So a lot of times that works out to be not so good of a case. A lot of the stuff, like if it really comes in small numbers, for us to get some access to it to make it so that it's much more prevalent in our hobby. I think the yellow spotted climbing toads are a good example of that, where, there might be just a handful of animals that come in every year. And some years no animals come in. And then we're able to get a big enough population that we can start releasing thousands of them into the hobby every year. Like, we have instances of that. So as far as like finding something rare, we're really looking for the animals that we can that are very prolific and make good captives. One of the issues we have that are not true of some of the other reptiles is that a lot of frogs, with the ways in which they jump, just don't make good captives. So a good example is the largest frog in the world, the Goliath. Like, it's just never going to make a good captive because it can jump 20 feet. Like, you just can't have that in a cage. Like, it's going to bash its face in. Like, it will never be a good captive. No one should ever keep those ever in captivity. They're not good captives. So we have those kind of issues where certain animals just don't make very good captives, or we as a hobby just don't understand how to take care of them yet. So we're really looking for species that are coming in small numbers, but just make really good pets, like those yellow spotted climbing toads. I mean, a toad, so it's got very thick skin, very handleable, but still can climb in a tank. Those things are just awesome.
All right, cool.
Hey, look at that.
There's one, right?
Yep, that's a female.
Very nice.
That's good.
So you jumping on female on that, is that based on the circle behind the eye? What is that?
It's really complex. So the girls are blue and yellow, and the boys are brown.
So they're color-coded pretty much.
Yeah,
It's not that complex.
The boys look like a brown. I mean, they don't look like our common toad here, but like as far as color and pattern, yeah, brown. That's a boy.
See, now this seems ass backwards to me, and maybe it's because I enjoy birds, but I always thought the male was supposed to entice the female by being better looking.
I don't know. Sometimes that's not the case. So
yeah.
Yep. The females can the color dulls the rest of the year, and then they get really bright at breeding season. But yeah, even out of breeding season, the girls look drastically different than the boys do.
Interesting.
Yep.
Go ahead, Ben, because I need a second for this one to marinate.
That's fine. So how did you take your first leap into going into reptiles? So you're a pastor. You were a pastor. Your wife's a substitute teacher. You're selling cups on the side. How did that go into, hey, I'm going to start keeping reptiles, and then I want to follow up with, how did that springboard you into, I want to start selling supplies?
Well, it's a kind of a long story. So I kept the cups and lids. I guess you call it hustle. that I was doing on the side, and sell off a big batch, buy another tank of frogs. Sell off a big batch, buy another tank of frogs. So I kept doing that all the time, thinking like, this is great that my hobby pays for itself. This is so awesome. So started doing that 2003, 2004. I just kept growing and growing and growing, and it became this like hobby type on the side thing. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever think that it would like be my job or anything like that. And then fast forward 2007, I just finished my master's in counseling, was going to do my internship. And a week before my internship was supposed to start, the agency called me, and it was a youth detention home. And they said, hey, we just lost our funding. We can't take any interns right now. So I called the school and said, hey, you guys got to find me another spot for my internship. This one just canceled. And they said, there's no way we can do that in a week. You're going to have to wait till next year. So I already resigned from my job. So here I am, just like jobless. And I said, I've always done this side hustle, like in the evening, in the morning, on the weekend. Like, I wonder if I really invested in this, like day to day, all day long, if I could turn this into something. So for that year, that became my unpaid job for that year, growing that. And then the next year I did my internship. And at the end of that internship, they offered me a job, and my wife and I just had our first son, and I said, hey, hon, like I can always go back to counseling, but like this is my chance to see if I could make this thing go. And so she gave me that blessing, and so I did it for another year out of our house. Hired a couple of employees to help. It had gotten that large, and then in 2009 decided to take the plunge and move the business outside of our house. And so in 2009. Through up till 2009, we had just done poison dart frogs and everything you needed to take care of poison dart frogs. And when we moved out of my house, we said, hey, we got to go a little bit broader if we're going to pay the rent of this place and pay for the employees that we have. And so started ordering a bunch of reptile supplies on top of that, and then branching out into other frogs. And then eventually started doing some reptiles as well. So just been organic growing. We've grown 25 to 45% year over year every year since 2004. So
that's impressive.
Yeah.
So, I'm friends with you on Facebook. Like I see you have quite a few employees. Like, how many do you have now?
We're really close to 100 right now. I think we might have had.
I thought it was like 40. Okay, I just want to say I thought it was 40. I was like, oh man, 40 or 50. That's crazy. 100 employees.
Yep. Yeah. So we've grown every year, but like we've especially grown more this year than we ever have grown. So we just passed 50 employees last springish summer, and so we've doubled in employees from last year to this year.
Okay, and so I don't want to let everybody in on this. The secret. I know this is a secret, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. Ryan and I, so Ryan's the other half of R&B Reptiles. He and I have talked about this. It's a big racket. So you have like maybe 30 guys go out raking people's leaves, and then you just bake them and sell them for like $15 a little Ziploc bag of like leaf litter. I'm just saying, like, if anybody wants to make some money, leaf litter is crazy.
And if I could just plug that right now, like we need your leaves. We need magnolia leaves and we need southern oak leaves. We pay $2 a gallon. All you have to do is rake them up into a bag. We will send FedEx to come and pick up your box. People have paid for their vacations collecting leaves for us. People have done some amazing things with the money just collecting leaves for us, and we cannot get enough. We cannot get enough. You guys might have met Zach, who heads up our animal breeding. His dad lives in Texas. He's got all of his neighbors raking up all their live oak leaves. They think it's hilarious that they rake up all their leaves, putting in boxes, and we send them checks of money for their stupid leaves that are in their yard. It's a racket, but we cannot get enough of the leaves. We cannot get enough of the leaves. Like,
so everybody that's listening to this right now is like counting up how they can, rake their leaves and send them to you. And then Dave right now, I can see, he has glasses on, but I can see he's turning. He gets leaves at his place.
Yes.
I'm Jewish, but I don't know if I'm that Jewish, buddy. I might have to leave this one alone. Like, I'm tempted, don't get me wrong, but I might actually leave this one alone. At least for now.
Alone.
It's like I think some people think that we're crazy when we tell them like, no, literally rake up your leaves, put them in a bag. We'll have FedEx come pick them up, and then we'll send you a check. Like I think people think we're crazy, and then other people are like, this is the best deal since sliced bread.
I know some people that I didn't know that you did that. I know that my brothers and I tell that people how much we've paid for leaf litter because we didn't bake any leaves. We're like, oh man, I just need a quick thing. And we were at a show. Josh's Frogs was there. So I was like, look at this bag of leaf litter. Like, I can't believe it's this expensive. And we're like, yeah, but we know it's baked. We know it's clean. And so we bought like 2 or 3 bags of it. And we're like, this is a racket. Like, I can't even believe that this is a real thing. And I'm like, I got to do that every year. I'm like, I got to do this. And then I haven't yet. I had no idea you sell or you buy leaves.
Oh yeah. I think a lot of the stuff too is about convenience. So people will buy the leaves for that. But like another one is the fruit flies. Like they take 2 weeks to mature. So you start a fruit fly culture, it's 2 weeks before you can feed from it. People just can't get on a 2-week schedule. So we sell hundreds and hundreds of fruit flies every week because people didn't make fruit flies 2 weeks ago. So it's about a convenience.
No, I can understand that. I don't do dart frogs because I don't want to deal with fruit flies that end up getting out in your house. So everybody, flightless. I'm doing air quotes right now for people that are listening on whatever podcast you're listening to and not seeing this. Flightless with air quotes. They're all flightless until they end up in your house, and you're like, do you guys have catchies? Do you know what a catchy is?
No, I don't think I know what a catchy is.
So a catchy, we plugged them before in our other videos, but it's a fan with a blue light on it and a sticky pad. So it blows the fruit flies and things come near it, and it blows them into a sticky pad. They sell them on Amazon. There's all different ones, but catchy's one of the ones we have. And I'm telling you, it works great. Unbelievably great.
Yeah, there's a lot of money in killing insects. That's where all the money in insects is killing them. We use a lot of sticky glue traps, so like the spiral things in the ceiling, and then a lot of bug zappers as well too. Keep the unwanted ones out.
Yeah, and those things don't look that great, but I'm telling you, go on Amazon, look at these fruit fly catchers. They're newer. Like we just got them this year. They're great because it keeps.
Check those out.
Yeah, I'll send you after this, but
please do.
So I got a question because I'm sure at this point now everybody's going to start their own leaf cooking racket because they hear how profitable this is. Not even saying profitable, just how many people they have involved. Let's talk about the machinery and process involved in that and what that investment was like so nobody thinks about doing it.
I'm telling you, an oven, man. That's all it takes, a tin pan and an oven.
No, we do not even sterilize the leaves. They're not even baked. No one does. It shortens the life. You want them to last longer. So you do not even want to bake them.
Okay.
You better stop talking now then because I think this conversation's over. We shouldn't get into these details.
Oh my goodness, my mind is like, okay. So do you do a wash? Nothing? It's just
nope, they're baked in the sun, but that's it.
Okay.
Conversation over. This is I was waiting to hear $40,000 or $60,000. We've said too much. We're gonna cut this part out.
People are gonna be collecting leaves left and right, man. I'm telling you, I'm gonna bring trash bags.
But there is not enough of them. I think right now we're out. Like we've ran through the season.
Wow.
It's unreal.
Okay. So you are 100 employees deep, and now multiple questions about this. Do you feel like your big jump this past year was based on online sales going through the roof with the lack of shows?
So I've been bugging everybody that will take a phone call with me. So, Ryan at Zilla, Steve at Exo, anybody who will take my call, I've been bugging them to see what they're seeing as well too. When I say we, I'd say me and the people we've talked to. Like the shows, I think have hurt some individual people, and there's been this big push in people going online. But like really what we're seeing, the growth in our hobby is in new people coming into our hobby. Like I was just on the phone call with Ryan from Zilla before this, and I hope I'm not sharing anything that Ryan wouldn't want me. But like when you look at the products, yeah, but I just don't know if he wants this information, so I'll say it, and he can let me know if it's wrong. But when he looks at like the product mix of what Zilla's selling a lot of, it's the stuff that newer people would be purchasing. So it's like the kits. Like here's the bearded dragon kit, or here's a leopard gecko kit. It's those kind of things that are really selling, and we're finding that out on our end too. That like when we look at return customers versus new customers, like a big chunk of our growth has been all in new customers. So I think we're seeing the shows hurting people that were doing the show circuit. But I think a lot of those people, and I'm surprised how many of them have actually moved a lot of their stuff online. But like pet stores and all these big manufacturers, Zilla, Exo, Zoomed, I mean, it's been unreal. Our hobby has grown a lot. So I would say part of our success is probably those shows. But then I think the other part of it is just, and what we attribute it to is people were at home on a computer for a long time, and they could finally do the research that they've been putting off for who knows how long. Like, hey, I always wanted to keep a bearded dragon, but I just never, wanted to figure out everything I needed, or I wanted to keep frogs, and I just never was able to figure out all the stuff that I needed. And they actually had time to do that. And so I think people finally took the plunge. So what that means for us as a hobby is going to be interesting. So we've had a huge influx of new people into our hobby. Like we use shows and Herp meetings and that kind of stuff to integrate people, to educate people. And a lot of that stuff isn't happening right now. So there's a lot of concern that like, hey, we need to do a better job of educating people moving forward online, because a lot of the avenues that we use, mentorship or Herp clubs or shows, those just aren't happening right now, or not happening at the pace that they were in the past. So I think our hobby is going to look a little bit different over the next year. So I feel for those weekend warriors traveling the show circuit, like how nerve-wracking that's got to be, and how it just seems to keep getting longer and longer and longer. My heart breaks for those guys and gals that are doing that. It's brutal. It's brutal. But yeah, I would guess that a lot of us online have seen some of that growth, but I think a lot of it too has just been new people in our hobby.
Yeah, okay. I agree with that. I think people are home, and I was just talking to somebody, one of my customers that called about asking questions. I think one of the things is people aren't going on vacations, so there's vacation money. I can't believe that there's this much vacation money, that like people are like spending tons of money, but also they're home and they're bored, so they want like a pet. They want something to play with. They want something to keep them busy and something positive. Animals are always positive. I think that, I don't disagree with you. I think people are doing the research. I think people are seeing what's out there, checking out YouTube, watching, videos of people playing with cool animals. I think it's been good for the hobby. I think it will be good for the hobby. I wonder if things start to go back to normal, if that'll drop off and like really come back down, or if people are going to be hooked. Yeah, I think a lot of people will get hooked, but
yeah. I don't know. I think it depends on the animals too. Like I was just talking to some people that are very big in the bird community, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're in the reptile, but like birds are really, really hard to take care of. And you had this influx of new people taking care of birds. They're expecting just tons and tons of rescue birds to be available in the next year or so, because people are going to like, all right, that was great while I was home, but now that I'm back to work, I'm not dealing with this bird that's going crazy all the time. And so I wonder in the reptile industry, how much are we going to see of that? Like the people that bought baby bearded dragons, and now they're to the point where, wait, I need a 70-gallon tank now? Like, peace out. I need to get rid of this animal. So I think we might see some of that. And hopefully we're not seeing that in other things that are kind of the outskirts of our hobby, like the really, really large snakes or alligators or that kind of stuff. Hopefully those parts of our industry have not seen the boom with new people, like some of the other parts of our hobby have seen. Because I think we could see the same things in another year or so of just a mass needing to get rid of a bunch of animals that people just aren't interested in doing or keeping anymore.
Wow. So as you were talking about that, and the whole people being at home, and Benjamin's comment, just needing something to do, something to have, and that was kind of at the back of my mind, because when we're talking about growing right now, at the same time, like you said, life will get back to what was the norm. I would like to hope, and this is not the new norm, and what's going to happen with the animals. So I think that is a good, genuine fear to have right now on, what people are going to do. But the only thing that kind of scares me about what you're saying too right now, it sounds like this is a bubble, like in the kind of like the housing market, and it's going to burst when we all get back out of the world and don't need our hobbies as much as we need them right now.
Yep. We that's one of the things that Ryan was talking about too. Like, how do we convert like new time? I guess when people buy their first animal, like I feel like they go one of two ways. They either like will keep that animal and it'll be a nice thing, it'll be a phase that they go through, or they turn into hobbyists and they have 17 tanks in their bedroom. Like they go one of two ways. And how are we going to help people integrate into our hobby to the point where they say, hey, I want to become a collector and I want to collect a bunch of animals and I want to make this my hobby, not just one of many things that I do, but I want to really make this my thing that I do. And I'm kind of nervous about that when you don't have shows and you don't have the Herp societies and you don't have people intermingling, that like these people are kind of isolated and so they can't be as successful as they would have been. And so it becomes, the stigma of like, oh, keeping reptiles and amphibians is hard. I watched the videos. Once it got busy, I stopped watching videos and missed out on some of the uniqueness of taking care of those animals. So it's a concern, but like I think it's also a call to arms for us in the hobby to say, hey, there's a lot of new people in our hobby. We need to find these people and help them to be successful.
And another reality with your saying too, and not really fully knowing if Corona definitely had an impact on your business in a positive way, but I know for sure in the industry, a lot of people with a lot of different species have sold out this year in record time. Like even the wholesale market at the moment is not so much non-existent, but people are not wholesaling things in the moment. And as we all know, when your business is doing well, you should expand, you should grow. But like we're saying right now, if maybe this year was just a, maybe the bubble, or maybe just, there were so many factors that made this year what it was for people. And our first podcast was me saying that I thought it was going to be a rough year. Like I didn't think that there'd be such a positive impact on this hobby based on the coronavirus and our limitations in life. Yep. So, I think one thing too, like we all keep in our back of our mind right now is, we're all selling out really fast. So we all kind of want to double down for next year, but we could start overproducing again in the next couple of years if we don't, like you said, find new ways to get people want to come in the hobby and not just come in with one buy, but come in and want maybe a small collection, even as a hobbyist.
Yep. Or I mean, because the more people that aren't successful, are the more people that communicate that it's hard. Like we don't want people to not be successful, because not only are they not keeping animals anymore, but then they communicate that to the people that they know. Like, yeah, we had a bearded dragon. It's hard to take care of it. It's hard to find the crickets, which is something that our hobby is dealing with now. Like there's a feeder insect shortage. There's these farms can't produce more bugs just at the drop of a hat. It takes time and it takes a lot of investment to be able to do that. And so, I'm heartbroken when I see these posts on Facebook, like my pet store doesn't have any feeder insects. Where do I go online to find them? And that just trickles down to other places being out and people having difficulty finding that kind of stuff. That we got to make sure all aspects of our hobby are ready for this. And, I think some of those places have to consider that, like, hey, do I really want to expand in the infrastructure to grow this if I think that our hobby is going to retract come next year when things go normal and people have less time and are doing less research? Are we going to contract as a hobby? And so I think people are fearful of that.
And not to bash anybody, but not all of us, especially not me. I don't have a background in economics. I don't have a background in anything, not marketing, not advertising. You got to put a little more effort into it. And when you sell an animal to somebody, if your biggest fear is that they're going to be competition, you got bigger problems with your business right now. You should want people to succeed. You want people to be successful. The goal is not to have somebody not be successful. And, even like, in my opinion, and we bring it up every episode, me and Ben breed skinks. Everybody knows me and Ben breed skinks. And, there was a little bit of this fear that went into that species during the growth with some of the community. Oh God, look at my animal that's got its tail ripped off during breeding. oh my God, look at this tragedy, look at that tragedy. And honestly, it almost feels like we're kind of at this weird point in that species where I'm not seeing a lot of new people want to come into them based on, a lot of different factors. And one being, we're scaring the fuck out of people. We're making it seem like this is something impossible and everything's going to go wrong. And because of that, we just took like 3 steps back, in my opinion.
Yep.
Just segue.
Yeah.
I don't even know if
I think I've always been of the impression that like our hobby has so much room to grow that I don't see other businesses that are doing similar stuff to us as competition. Like we're really competing with movie theaters, with bowling alleys, like we're competing with entertainment, and we have so much market share to gain. I think this year is a great opportunity for us to take a step back and be like, oh my gosh, if people had time to do the research, our hobby can grow to the point that like we have cricket shortages and stuff like that. Like that's how we should be formulating how we move forward to say, hey, I want to partner with some of the other breeders. Let's figure out how to care for the customers that are bringing on this stuff. Let's help them to be successful so that we all can win. Like I really feel like this mindset of like scarcity that like you can only sell so many skinks. Like, no, like there's tons and tons of room. There's room enough for us to sell every skink that's ever been produced and more. And so we just got to figure out ways in which to come together and help support the customers that are purchasing this stuff so that our hobby can grow. And I think the more our hobby grows, the more successful all of us will be. I don't think our hobby's to the point where it's saturated enough that we need to be competing. Maybe that's true of eggs and milk. They're not going to sell more eggs, more milk, but that's not where we're at. There's just so much more room for us to be selling animals.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think one of the things that people around that maybe are listening or that I try to talk to as well, and exactly what Dave's saying is trying to help people to be more successful. So one thing that you could do, like if you're listening, one thing you could do, even if you're a small breeder, like you're breeding just even a pair of something, anything, that if you know what you're doing and you're researching, you talk to people. So when people ask questions, that you're answering them honestly and you're being open and you're just putting in that effort and that time to explain a species, even if they're not gonna, even if somebody's not gonna buy from you. Like
Yep.
I say it all the time to people that contact us. I want to help you find the right animal for you so you're happy with it and successful. And if that's not for me, that's okay. Let me help you find somebody that can, or let me help you find a species that you'll enjoy. And I've turned people, away from some of my animals that I've like, hey, I have this animal for sale. I would love you to buy it for sure. But it seems like you should really buy this other snake that Dave has, or this other snake that our friend Bob Vu has, or this, whatever. And I do that on a regular. And I think that people should look to try to make people successful and make them happy. The more people that are happy with the hobby, the bigger it's going to be and the bigger it's going to grow. Yep. So even if you don't sell an animal to that person, you'll sell an animal to somebody that touched that person or that person influenced. Yep. Is my theory behind it anyway.
I totally agree.
Boxing. So yeah, that was the rabbit hole, Dave. Go ahead. I know you had something. I was jumping in.
Oh, me?
Yeah, I thought you had something.
No, I was just listening. I mean, we could go on for hours about this. And, like I said, I really love the way you're thinking about things because, I like when someone's like, oh, look, we don't have enough fruit flies, compared to just being like, okay, cool. Someone's going to take care of that. You're like, you know what? Who do I have to call to actually get this moving? Like, what do we have to do as a whole to get it to where that's not going to be an issue again?
Yep.
So, and, I'm sure you are where you are because of the way you think, to be able to grow, it's like you said, to 100 employees, even over just 17 years of messing around the hobby and a few of those years being in the hobby stage, like there's big business that doesn't grow like that. Like that's huge.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. We've been lucky and worked really hard at the same time.
So out of your expansion, how many of these employees are leaf people?
Our making department is 5 people, and they would probably spend 10% of their time on leaves. Leaves isn't a large part of it, unfortunately. I wish it was larger, but it's not.
Okay.
Now, he's really trying to get people out of this idea to go rake leaves.
We need more leaves, but yeah.
Okay. How many people would you say on the regular are sending you leaves right now?
We have probably around 5 different people that do it on a regular basis, and then we'll get these people every now and then that'll reach out to us. So we'll post on social media or send an email out to our customer base, like saying, "Hey, we need leaves," and we'll get some people trickle in. But we have a few people that are on the regular. Some people that probably you guys would be shocked that get 5 figures from us a year collecting leaves.
Have you considered to expand on your business by focusing on certain areas around the country that have a higher percentage or more density of a certain tree you like, and reach out to kids and give them the opportunity to maybe build up an allowance by raking leaves and sending them into you?
We would love to. We really need to figure that part out.
I say give it to the kids.
That's
I
right.
think you could have a great thing. This is like the next lemonade stand in my eyes, but I think maybe a little more profitable.
He said 5 figures.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say a little more. I didn't mean more profitable for him. I meant other people.
No, I'm just saying, like, that is mind-blowing to me.
Oh, it is.
Yep.
Yeah. I love stuff like this. Like, I absolutely adore stuff like this because there's so many little things in life that, you hear about how people are making a living and you're like, how the fuck's that even possible?
Yep.
And this is definitely going to fall in that category, and it's pretty high. I'll be honest.
That's 50,000 gallons of leaf litter somebody had to send you.
Yep.
Like, that's just,
Well, I don't even know what to talk about now. I'm not saying this is over, but I'm over here just kind of doing my own thing up here right now. So you guys might need to take a second to kind of draw me back in.
Okay.
I'm thinking about how to create a pyramid scheme with little kids involved, not in a weird way.
That part of that's a soundbite we don't want.
Please keep that in there. They're used to it by now, buddy.
Oh man, I knew you weren't gonna let that leaf thing go. That's great.
It's just too interesting and too unique. I'm sorry.
I knew I wanted to bring it up because it was something I thought about since we picked up leaf litter at a Repticon from something like that. I can't remember exactly even where we were, but we picked up a mister, and we're like, hey, we might as well grab a couple of this and a couple of that, like just pick up a couple. And when I saw it, and I said, what are we doing wrong with our lives right now? Like, I had to ask. Since we have you on, I had to ask. But we could, it's hard to turn back to frogs right now. Like, I want to talk about some like rare species and stuff, but man, leaf litter.
How about this? Let's talk about other things that were really good pushes in your business based on product lines, maybe something you developed, maybe something you created on your own from the beginning to end. Like, I'd love to hear about more of those processes.
So we're really big in creating different substrate mixes. So the common dart frog substrate mix is the Atlanta Botanical Garden mix. It's something that the Atlanta Botanical Garden made up. And they started using for poison dart frogs. And so most of our hobby, that's what they use for poison dart frogs. So we've done the same kind of thing and trying to find soil mixes that don't need quite as the high humidity that poison dart frogs need, and doing some different animals, so like crested geckos, that kind of stuff. So we have a biobedding, which we've researched and developed so that you can keep live plants with your crested geckos and other lizards. And then we'll be coming out with a bioactive desert substrate system coming out later this year or early into next year. So we're really big on developing ways in which for people to keep their stuff a little bit more naturalistic. We find on our end too, the more we're able to figure that kind of stuff out, the easier it is on labor, but also the healthier the animals are and the larger they end up being, and the faster they end up growing. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff, as well as we'll be rolling out our own line of some of the electronic stuff, from bulbs to heat pads to that kind of stuff, in the next 4 to 6 months as well too. Yep.
Gotcha.
So, one thing I found very fascinating in the hobby, and for the life of me right now, because I'm only thinking about leaves, I can't remember the scientific name or anything, but roly-polies are pill bugs.
Yeah.
They felt non-existent, and then overnight, they were everywhere. And a lot of that, of course, is bioactives. So bioactives seem like they're really coming up right now and becoming a very, I wouldn't say an industry standard, but an extremely popular way to keep reptiles.
Yeah, very much so. Like I think those isopods, like they're becoming their own. Yeah, they're becoming their own thing. Like I mean, people are keeping those as if they're like their pet themselves. And so I mean, there are isopods that are 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 a piece per bug.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I didn't want to cut you off, but so we got into isopods a little bit. Ryan thinks they're interesting, and we keep them to keep things, a couple bioactive things that we got going on. We keep some insects and things like that. And so we're like, all right, yeah, that's cool. And Ryan starts getting into these. Okay, look, when you're spending $100 on five isopods, I'm like, okay, no. And how do you keep them? Oh, you got to keep them in the wet charcoal or, like, I mean, and they just do it. It's fine. Are you kidding me? Like, they started naming them like the rubber ducky isopod and all these. Okay, they look cute under a magnifying glass, I guess. Like, come on, really? And so, like, I'm blown away with that market. Blown away with that market.
That market's really a collector market too. Like you've got to collect all of the different species. Yeah. Some new species will come up, and everybody has to have that. It's kind of like tulips and where was that? Tulips in Holland, where the price just keeps going higher as just somebody comes out with the new next rarest isopod. Yeah, it's crazy. It is really crazy.
I can't remember that tulip comment. There was a commercial overseas about tulips. So the price of tulips was going up, going up, going up, and then all of a sudden at the end of the commercial, it's like, why are we spending this much? And all of a sudden, like, the price goes plummeting. People are just giving tulips away on the streets. Yeah. I've joked around that that's how it could be with ball python mutations every once in a while in this hobby. But I got to find that video. It's a pretty comical video. But, back to isopods. Like, it's almost like a nerdy badge of, like, honor or, like, a power move to be like, I just spent $20 on this shit cleaner, and I bought 5 of them.
Yep.
Kind of like, I'm better than you kind of thing in a way. And that's cool, man. I'm all about that. Nerd it up big time. But the first time I had a real discussion about isopods, and I'm sure he's not listening, so he's not going to feel bad. I don't remember his name, but it's a gentleman that actually goes overseas. He's collecting them in the wild because his importers were not getting them enough. I met him, I think, at the Arlington show, but I know he does Pomona also. And, like that guy signed about finding like 2 or 3 new species a year, and just talking about, I sell these, but they're in you have to buy 20 at a time, and they're $22 a piece, and I won't sell them any less than that. And it was mind blowing. Another thing that you would never think could be as profitable as it is. It's not leaf profitable, but it's pretty profitable.
We kept joking that like once these importers realize that people are going to pay more for the bugs than they are for the animals, and the bugs are way easier to move into the country, like we're in trouble. We're not going to get any more animals. We're just going to get shipments and shipments of isopods.
Oh, I am blown away with that whole thing. So when we first, so Ryan's like, hey, we got to get a couple of these, and Ryan's like all about it. So Ryan loves like, oh man, I'm going to get these little ones. I'm going to get the, and so we have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 species. There's like the peach ones and the blue ones and the whites and the, right. So I'm like, they all do the same thing. They all look really similar. Okay. I was like, all right, that's cool. And then when he put them to get, like when he started keeping them and like, they're just expanding with almost no effort. I'm talking, you throw in, a little bit of this powder, you could throw in fish food. Like, I mean, and make sure it's a little humid. What? That's it? That's it.
Yep.
So
you're growing money.
Yep.
Are these difficult to breed? Like, has breeding in the United States picked up on this yet?
Some of them are not. I would say none of them are difficult to breed. Some of them just take a long time to breed. So that's the only issue. Like the dwarf whites, I mean, those will breed pretty young. But like some of the species, it's you got to raise it up for 6 months, 8 months. Some of them over a year. So you got to wait. Which there's always money to be made if you're patient.
Yeah, Dave, if you want some, I got like. We just leave them alone, and they grow up, and then we'll scoop some out, and we'll put them into our little setups.
Yep.
Well, I didn't hear anything about rubber duckies when we were talking, and I haven't really picked the color phase I like yet. But I mean, I'll consider them if you're just giving them to me. But we'll talk about that after.
Yeah, I could definitely send you a box of isopods. It's like, quick story. Like, we went up to a friend of ours who wanted us to check out some skinks he had, and he's like, I'm done with my isopods. I have a whole, and hopefully he doesn't hear this because it's a bad story, but I have a whole thing of isopods, and we're like, hey, we want to get into isopods, I guess. And so he gave us our first, like, it was a big box of isopods. And he said, next year, if you guys want, you can trade me back some dubia roaches. And we're like, sure, man. Dubia roaches are just as easy to produce. There's nothing to it, right? You just keep them warm a little bit. And so we took them. We went over to Steve Schmelly's from Leapin' Leechies. We're at his house for 3 or 4 hours, looking at his stuff. We come out, and the car was a little bit cold, and they all were dead. Like, not even, like, we're like, oh, whoop. Well, and we're like, oh. So I felt real bad. I didn't tell the guy. Hopefully he doesn't watch this, but he is.
Great bug killing story, buddy.
There's worse things, I guess, but that was.
That was pretty heartbreaking, bud. To be honest. Like, that was not the happy ending I was looking for.
Kind of a downer.
Drag Steve into it too, man. Like, Jesus, like that's a bit much.
Well, now we keep them. We know what we're doing, and we're breeding the crap out of them. Really, I mean, it's just easy to do.
Are you guys keeping dubia as well too? Then you said.
We keep them. We feed them as treats to our blue tongues, and then also we have some tarantulas that we're actually, not to spoil anything, but I'm trying to trade them up with Chad Hulker. Chad Hulker, one of our friends, Chad, just got into tarantulas all of a sudden. So.
Oh yeah, Chad went on a spending spree in Daytona this weekend. He was buying aquariums, plants, sand. I mean, he went all out this weekend on spiders.
Yeah, I told him we have a handful that we're like, yeah, you want to keep them, dubia roaches, you want to keep like all these things, and then you go, wait a second, these tarantulas have 300-400 babies, and we got to separate them. We changed our minds. We kept them for 5 years. We grew them up to adults. Changed our minds, I guess.
Tarantulas are very labor intensive. They definitely are. Yeah.
Keeping them, as growing them up and keeping them is not that hard.
Breeding them, yes.
Breeding them is labor intensive.
Oh, baby. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
So
Chad
back to you, Josh. What?
Oh, what was that?
I was going to say back to Josh because now it's just talking about.
Oh, yeah, because now we're just going on rants about other breeders and not even talking about Josh anymore. I was literally about to tell you how Chad told me how to breed tarantulas this weekend, but we're not even going to talk about that.
We do have quite a bit of tarantula breeding. We do a lot of those. Those have been new for us in the last, probably the last year. We've done a lot more tarantulas. That's a totally different market than the rest of our stuff. So we're always trying to find those things that are like not cannibalizing other stuff. But tarantula seems to be that one odd thing. And I've really enjoyed learning a lot about that from some of the people that we have on staff. It's been very interesting. Totally different than the rest of our hobby. It's really cool.
Tarantulas are awesome.
Yeah, they are.
I'm just thinking about something actually. Maybe we can ask a question. So we got a pair of giant African millipedes, and we tried to breed them, and apparently they're very, very difficult to breed. I think one of the issues that makes it hard to breed them is the type of substrate. And so we tried them in a couple different substrates. They live, they're fine, but and they're awesome. If you hold them, they're great. They're like a really cool insect, awesome species. You may have to have a permit depending on where you live, but it's possible. But they don't breed. And the way that they breed is they burrow down into the substrate to lay eggs, and we could never get them to burrow into our substrate. And since you're a substrate guy now, you're like doing different things. So we ended up giving one to Brian Barczyk, and he put it in a video, and then we got nonstop, messages about selling these giant African millipedes. And I think if we could figure out a way to get them to breed here, and I really think it's a substrate issue, I think you could do really well with them.
Yep. Now, how deep are you doing the substrate? Is that the issue, that is just compacting because of how much you have, the weight?
So I knew that they had to dig pretty deep. So we had maybe, not in the video here, like 8 inches of substrate.
Yep. Yeah. The issue when you get that deep is it just gets so compacted that like it doesn't have anything. So I would even wonder if you could use something else to aerate the substrate, like keeping some isopods in there with something that the substrate, and that wasn't even able to make it. Interesting.
Yeah, we kept a lot of isopods and even put some roaches in there to see if they would dig up stuff. And
right, nothing. Because our isopod substrate has a lot of bark in it as well, so that it can be a little bit of less compaction happening. And so I wonder if mixing some other harder stuff into that would keep it from doing that. But if you just want to send us the millipedes, we'll take care of it though.
Oh, gotcha. If I can find some more, I would do that. I would, because I think they're awesome. I think they're awesome, but you don't find them for sale that often. There's a bug lady near us that is always at the Hamburg show, and she sells them every once in a while. And yeah, they're not cheap. I mean, we paid like $120 each for them, and for a millipede, and they're cool. They're really cool, but I don't know how to get them to breed.
Wow, that's crazy. The bugs are interesting. Like it's part of our hobby that I think we don't realize how much legislation plays into it. But like you talk about the stuff that US Art puts out, like there could be another company putting out 4 times as much stuff just about insects and the differences that they're coming up with, from them outlawing dubia 2 years ago and then having us petition to add them back in and all this stuff. It's crazy the amount of back and forth that we're seeing in a lot of those insects. It's pretty fragile. Like there could be at any time just the hammer comes down and these insects are no longer allowed to be shipped. It's pretty fragile market, especially when you're talking about some of those millipedes and isopods. So we just denied permits on a bunch of isopods. So it's unreal. It really is.
Wow.
Oh, that's terrifying.
It really is. It really is. Could you imagine like dubia not being? I mean, with the cricket shortage we're having now, if dubia were like, no, we don't want you shipping them. Like that'd be devastating to our hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with your development as a business, and do you find that your mindset is more about the development of products at this point over what's the next frog I got to buy because I can't live without it?
Yeah. Like being a large team like we are, like I spend less time figuring out what the next frog is or even what the next product is. A lot of my time is helping people have the freedom to be able to thrive in that. So Zach and his team are researching the next animals and researching the best ways in which to breed the animals that we're caring for. And then we have our product development team that's constantly working on throwing out new products. And so more of my role is less in the creative aspect and more about helping those teams work together and accomplish the goals that we've set long term for them. So it's in some ways sad. Like I really enjoyed the hobby part of that, and that becomes less and less of what I'm doing. And so it's got its drawbacks when you get to this size that like I can't spend a day taking care of animals and being in the animal area. It's just part of the job change as we get older. So I do enjoy a lot of that stuff still, and so keeping animals here at my house. I haven't gotten to the point where I don't want to be around animals anymore, being around them all day. Still like to keep stuff even at home. So I get to do a little bit of that. But as far as like what's the next frog to breed, that's not really in my job description anymore, unfortunately.
Again, you got a lot of people that depend on you. Your obsession or your little hobbies on the side is not going to pay their bills every day. So I understand that.
Yep.
So how big of do you run one large warehouse with all employees? Do you have multiple different locations for your business?
So right now we do a lot of live plants as part of the poison dart frog area, but also just as houseplants as well. So we have a greenhouse that's about 40 minutes from our headquarters, And our current facility is 66,000 square feet. And we're in the process of purchasing another building that's another 24,000 square feet. So we'll be moving animals out of our current building into the new building. And then the rest of our departments from shipping to making will take up the space that animals is taking up now. So in the aspect of getting more space, and then we're looking at West Coast distribution. We'd like to open up a facility. We're looking at Arizona in the next year to open up so that we can ship to California and out west a little bit quicker, a little bit safer than we currently can here in Michigan. That's a long ways away, and so we want to better serve those customers. So looking at a facility in Arizona as well to spread that out. And then with Arizona comes the opportunity to even do some animals outdoors. So we're running experiments now and research, figuring out which are the best animals for us to work with in that capacity, so that we can do some stuff outdoors. With that climate. Being here in Michigan, there's nothing we can do up here, and so we're excited about doing some outdoor stuff out there.
I hear tigers are really good actually outdoors in Arizona.
Really? The new Tiger King.
Yeah. A little while, Dave. We haven't talked about that in a while.
See,
So,
Benjamin, we don't talk about Tiger King anymore, but you still bring it up every episode. You're right. We haven't had a long discussion in a while, but don't act like you don't bring it up all the time still.
I do once in a while bring it up. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So, and if you need to like take a break or anything like that, let me know. Not a big deal. Okay, so I had another question. There was something else. Oh, so you used to, probably not as much now, but you used to go herping quite a bit. And what was your favorite story of like finding something awesome in the wild? Like, did that drive your passion? Have you been, outside of the country to look for dart frogs? Have you tell us something about that?
So I guess there's quite a few different stories that come to mind. As children, when I say children, I'm talking 7 to 14 years old. We're hitting the same swamp area and the same creek and the same lake. And I was always shocked at how every few months, we'd find something that we had never found before. And this is, I'm going to date myself, but this is like the internet didn't exist at that time. I couldn't just take a picture and post it to somewhere. We literally had to go to the library and rent books and take them home and try to figure out what the heck it is that we just caught. So there was a lot of that was exciting, that year after year we were finding new stuff. I can remember the first snapper we found, and we thought that it was amazing, and brought it home, and my mom's freaking out, that thing could take your fingers off, and we just thought it was so cool. We'd never seen that before. I can remember different snakes we'd catch, and this is not a garter snake. What the heck is this? And being able to do that kind of stuff, that's been a lot of fun. I've herped Honduras was really cool. I really like that it's an area that's not a common herping location. So we saw a fair amount of stuff. We were on the side of a hill, and we were checking out this tarantula, and then all of a sudden this wasp comes flying over the top of our head, the size of a small bird, and grabs hold of the tarantula and eats it right in front of it. It was just amazing stuff that you're not going to see anywhere else. So that was really cool. And then the last couple of years, we've been kind of lucky with the way in which other trips have lined up. So we did Herpaton that Alan put on. We were able to go out in the desert and do our first desert herping that I've ever done in my life. That was a lot of fun every night. And then we did the same thing right outside of Las Vegas as well too, when we were there for Super Zoo as well too. So doing some of that stuff in the States. And then right now as a father, I get to herp with my sons and head out in the swamp, and we get to take pictures of green frogs, and everybody who sees it says, "Oh, that's a bullfrog," and we get to act all smart and be able to tell the difference between the two. And so I really love his excitement. Even around our house, we have the same wild stuff all the time. Like there's one salamander that moves between our gutters and underneath of our deck. We've got these two giant toads. One lives in the front of the house and one lives in the back of the house. They look drastically different. I love herping around here. We're living out in the country. We got a lot of access to ponds and lakes and stuff like that. And living out in the country, we get to see a lot of stuff that people would consider pretty rare. So like we have a lot of Blandings turtles by us, which I believe they're endangered. I don't think they're critically endangered, but endangered. But they're all over the place by us. We have a few bald eagles that like to perch around here in some of the farms and stuff like that. So being out here in the country, we get to see a lot of stuff that people would say was pretty rare, but it's just kind of commonplace here. So I still love going out. As far as like going down to South America, like the farthest I've been down is Honduras. From what I understand, there's some good herping spots down there, and then there's some herping spots where you get the diarrhea you never want to get, herping spots. And so I'd love to someday to get down there and develop the iron stomach and reach some of these frogs and see some of those in the wild, but I haven't got the chance to yet. But desert herping was a lot of fun. Like I was surprised at how much fun it would be. It was just a lot of fun.
Really cool.
Yeah.
South America, you're making it sound terrifying. Honestly, I'm not sure if you went to Honduras or if you were actually playing Jumanji and you didn't realize it. Because I'm really trying to go there in January, man, and honestly, I really don't want to shit myself. And if I see a wasp that big, man, I don't think my brain can handle it. Like, I don't think I can.
It was pretty amazing.
Oh, go ahead, Ben, man. I'm still just listening to this. I'm just enjoying it.
Well, I forgot to move my clock, so it's going off, and I knew it was going to happen. I have a weird clock that chimes every 15 minutes, and so I mute my camera, and it got called out on it. Okay, so just the way it goes. So one of the other things, I know that when we were emailing back and forth, I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but I don't think it's a bad time. You were talking about your conservation efforts that you're working on, and maybe something that you want to talk about and mention. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about it.
If ever I get a chance, I'd just really like to talk about some of the ways in which our animal team really believes that, like, if we're keeping animals here in captivity and we want to say, hey, yeah, it's for conservation, like it's really hard to draw that connection and say, hey, because I'm keeping a crested gecko, I'm helping with conservation. So we really believe that people keeping animals makes them more passionate about conservation, but we also feel like being in this industry, we have an obligation to be connected with conservation from a financial standpoint. So what we do with a few of our species is we connect them with conservation efforts. So like our mantellas, we work with an organization out of Madagascar. So every time somebody buys a mantella, we send money down to Madagascar to help support research and protect some of those frogs. And then we also do, we just started this last year, we set some goals for the animal team, and then when they hit those goals, we offer up conservation grants to organizations. So this, just a few months ago, we did our first batch of grants. We gave one $1,000 grant and two $500 grants, and had our customers vote on which conservation effort to support. And so whenever I get the chance, I just love to talk about that and kind of encourage our hobby that, like, hey, if we want to say that we're really about conservation, then I think we need to tie some dollars to that. And so I'd encourage anybody who's from anybody who has a small project to somebody who has a large project, of like just earmarking some of that product to really help with conservation. I think if we all just did a little bit, we'd be able to conserve a lot more than just really hoping that by somehow breeding animals in captivity, we're contributing to conservation. So, I hope that we can do a lot more conservation in the future. And I think as a hobby, it's our responsibility to do that. And we have a great avenue and a great obligation to be a part of that. And so I'd really like to see a lot more of us doing that.
That's awesome. And can people find that information on your website or?
Yeah, can I send you the link and you can add it to the show notes or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely do that. And for people that are listening, do you want to just shout it out now real quick? And like your website, if you search Google or if you Google Josh Frogs or?
If you just Google Josh's Frogs conservation, it'll show a blog article that we wrote of all the ways in which we ask our customers to get involved in conservation, whether that's purchasing mantellas or giving to some of those organizations that we're giving towards. So yeah, they'll be able to search it that way. Or if you go directly to joshsfrogs.com and click on the how-to guides, one of the first ones is our conservation stuff. So yeah.
Awesome.
Very
That's
cool.
great. Do you have another one, Dave? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I'm okay.
So,
No.
so what's the rarest species of frog that you've worked with?
That's pretty, like I talked a little bit about the yellow spotted climbing toads. Those are pretty rare. Like you're talking less than, in some cases, less than 10 were brought in in any given year into the hobby. Some of the, I wish I could just show a picture, but
Tell me, I'll pull one up.
I'm not sure that you even have a picture of those guys yet. I like that some of the smaller frogs that we've had a lot of success with, like some of the lemurs that we've bred over the last year, like those kind of things that like are maybe not that were not that common in the hobby and now are like completely reliably available all year round. Those kind of things make me excited. Like even hourglass frogs that, you know, tend to be like, hey, they're available, and then, hey, I can't find them for 8 or 9 months, that we've been able to make available pretty regularly. And then we've had some success with some of the nest breeding, like the Borneo ear frogs. I think those are really cool. Like if you think of, if you guys have ever worked with like great stuff, like you fill cracks and stuff like that, it turns the yellow. Like that's what they build. They build these foam nests that look like a great stuff in the corner. And so we've had a lot of success with those. So I think like doing something with an animal that like breeds a little bit differently than what other frogs are like. Yeah, those are the Borneo ear frogs. They're nest breeders. I don't know if there actually is that many pictures of their foam nest, but they're kind of cool. So any of those, like I just really feel like our tree frog team does a really good job of like, because a lot of different tree frogs breed drastically different. It's not like the same system works for all of them. And so I think when they kind of find a way to breed some of those guys and do it in a way that makes it successful and gets it to the point where like, hey, it's not this odd frog that you could get for 1 month every 2 years. It's now something that you can get on a regular basis. I think that's really cool. From those to the reed frogs, which make great paludarium type friends. So like tanks with water on the bottom and then a lot of plants in the top, that climb really well. I think those are really cool that we can offer something that just really makes a good desktop frog that people can be successful in a naturalistic setup that's not that very large at all. So yeah. So I really like the variety, I guess I would say, more than like specific rare ones. So like on the poison dart frog front, there's always the Lamazai, which are the rare frogs that, it goes back to what you said about the isopods. It's like a status symbol. Like, a lot of the Pumilio, that kind of frogs tend to be like the status frogs, that I guess at some point you just realize like, okay, it's just for status. It's not for any other reason that we're actually keeping those. And so I'm less excited about those and more excited about just the odd ones that people don't really think are that amazing. But like, I just think it's cool that like they're just available all the time now. It's not something that's hard to get, and they make really good captives. And so those are the frogs that I'm more interested in than the fatty. What's the frog that nobody else has and that I get first access to it. So I'm just more excited about the longevity of the hobby. And as a dad with kids, like I'm just excited that like some of these species that probably had nobody taking the time to really work with probably wouldn't be around when they're older, and now just are going to be readily available and readily accessible in the market because people like us took time to figure out how to breed them and how to breed them sustainably. So I guess that's what I'm more excited about than the rare odd frog. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, I think that's well said. I think that's definitely a good goal and definitely a good outlook on it. So in that same vein, one of the things you mentioned is some of animals that you can keep on a desk or that look cool that, you know, don't require a lot of space. What is an optimal space if somebody wanted to get like just something very small? They live in an apartment or whatever. What is an optimal setup maybe for a good beginner to keep dart frogs? Maybe a species and
Yep. Yeah. For poison dart frogs, we really recommend the 20-gallon high. So they're a little bit harder to do like on a desktop because the 20-gallon high is 24 inches by 12 inches. So it's a little bit big for a desktop. If you're doing more of a desktop, I'd highly recommend some of the what we call like paludarium type frogs. So whether that's reeds or hourglass frogs, where you actually have water on the bottom of the tank, maybe even a couple of fish in the bottom, and then some larger plants growing out of the water for them to climb on. That'll make much better desktop animals than poison dart frogs tend to utilize a lot of space. You can get away with like a 15-gallon tank for poison dart frogs, but usually for desktops, we're recommended some of those smaller tree frogs that you can set up naturalistically. So there's not a lot of maintenance for the tank. You're just adding food to it.
Okay.
Gotcha. And so when you say a small footprint, what is the footprint on one of the smaller tanks?
So like we recommend like a 12, 12, 18, which is the equivalent of like a 10-gallon tank. Yeah.
That's not bad. Not bad at all.
No, something that somebody can keep on their desk and doesn't take up too much space. If anybody has a desk that they're going to anymore, if that's a thing.
Right, yeah.
I feel like in Ben's head, when he asked that question, he was thinking about like one of those acrylic things you put a baseball in, maybe? Because every time you tell him 10 or 20 gallons, like he's like, my desk is not that big.
It's not that big, that's true, but I wasn't thinking that small. I was thinking, you know, maybe, I don't know, 8 inches tall by like 6 by 6 or something like that.
Yeah, we're working with a lot of small geckos right now, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to release some of those. But a lot of those, I think, could be done in a much smaller tank, maybe even the 12 cubes, or on some of those, even the 8-8-12 desktop terrariums would be work out really well with those. They're really tiny geckos.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I would lose those, I'm sure. I have like sausage fingers. I mean, I don't know. I have trouble with the small colubrid stuff that we keep sometimes, like especially first out of the egg or whatever. You know, I'm like handling them, and Ryan's like, Ben, seriously, it's like a ramen noodle, and you're trying to whip it around. I'm like, I don't need it, you know, but it goes. But anyway, so Dave, what else you got for us? I don't know if you want to keep digging into frogs because I enjoy it, or do you want to get back to the leaves?
I mean, I'm kind of a little all over the place. You know, like I said, I don't really know. I don't really know. I don't like that you're putting this on me right now, man.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I do that. I don't mean to.
No, it's fine. I understand. You know, the brains of the operation and all, but yeah, right now, like I said, I really, you know, I have known about your company based on the fact that, you know, I am a show whore, and you know, you pull up to the show on a Friday to set up, and all of a sudden you just see this crate that just showed up, and it says Josh's frog spray painted on it, and you know, I always thought that was pretty unique. You know, I wouldn't know exactly how more to butter you up on that, but you know, when you start getting to that level, you know, people aren't really just like, this isn't a weekend thing anymore. We're not really messing around. You know, it looked official. Your setups always looked really great. I love the diversity in your product lines. I had no idea how bad you were price gouging me on leaves till just now. You know, really just from a whole, just incredibly impressed with everything at the shows. So, you know, like I said, I was excited when we said we were going to bring you on. You know, sometimes I'm a little weary when it comes to people that maybe focus more on a product line, but you know, your other interest in the hobby, you know, make you, in my opinion, a very interesting person. So, you know, I'm definitely enjoying all this. What I want to talk about now, though, I don't really know. This is all Ben at this point, buddy. I'm just gonna stare at the screen and enjoy myself.
We've really missed the shows. Like we made a decision not to do Daytona. Like I think we went back and forth. Like shows are really successful for us, not only selling stuff there, but like getting our name out to people. We do a lot of recurring from feeder insects and that kind of stuff. But like, being as there's a lot of people on our staff that like are really nervous about this and trying to figure out like, okay, if we sent a team down there, would we quarantine for so long? I think it's been really hard on us. And really hard to try to figure out like how do we support the hobby if we're going to try to stay back and not do some of the shows. It's been really hard and not something that we've taken lightly at all. And it'll be interesting to see what the shows look like this fall. I know with the new show in St. Louis, and then with NRBC coming up here shortly, it'll be interesting. Like I can't wait to see some of the pictures from Daytona to see what the show was really like. And I hope the guys there just killed it. I hope there was tons of people through the door and that everybody sold out of animals. But I think it's going to be weird a little bit for a little bit longer in the show schedule going on. I know some of the shows by us have tried some outdoor shows, but I'm guessing that outdoor show season is ending here shortly with the weather. But we just need to figure out a way to figure out how to limp along a little bit longer, and hopefully we can get those shows back up or figure out something else to get the animals in front of these people on a regular basis. I'm kind of nervous about our hobby in this regard.
Well, I do think there is an importance to the show because, there are a lot of people I meet at the shows where it's the first time they ever went to a show and they're blown away by how much they're looking at. Like they just don't understand the magnitude or the diversity of the hobby. So I do think there is an importance to that. But, I honestly believe the power that you have online with marketing and Facebook and other social media is even more powerful than setting up a table at a show. I generally do miss the conversations. I miss the connection with customers. Real true conversations. But, I don't necessarily think the lack of shows clearly are not going to hurt us in any way. People, in my opinion, are not in my opinion, but what I've heard from other breeders have had their best year ever in sales. And, one thing I always emphasize a lot in this hobby is it's kind of an adapt or die hobby. It is ever changing. And when Corona hit, it was adapt to that. Find a new way to run your business, or your business, has a chance of failing. One bad year in this hobby can, really hurt a breeder. But, like I said, I'm really torn on the show thing right now because, I do think we need them, but I don't know how bad we need them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I can't imagine had we experienced what we experienced this year without the internet, like unreal, like how lucky we were, like, the fact that this didn't happen 20 years ago. How devastating that would have been to our hobby. So I think we lucked out in that regard. But, I just think we need some of the non-tangible stuff, like just not selling animals, but some of the other stuff that happens that shows connections with people, tips and tricks that are shared. Like we got to figure out a way to bring some of that stuff back to our hobby. And you have
No.
What?
Is that a puppet?
No. Oh, this? No, it's just a little buddy. Just a little buddy.
He just remembered he had it on his bed the whole time and thought he'd go get it.
Eat me some marshmallows with my frog clip.
Oh my gosh. Wow, you went all out.
There's I have some frog stuff. So when you guys are talking about shows, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, and I know Dave was talking about, seeing you at the shows and stuff like that, but one of the things that really attracted me to you guys is that how great your people are. It's not just you, like, and what products you sell and stuff like that. It's that you must have a culture of just really great things going on. And so this is the one buttering up moment we, kick butt a little bit once a show. And I think really just the people that you have working for you, I haven't met one that I was like, oh, that's, that person isn't cool or something, And so I remember those people. I try to see them every year that we go out to shows, things like that. And even if I'm not buying stuff from you guys every day or anything like that, I still really enjoy, meeting you guys and always look forward to it. So.
Thank you for saying that. That's a huge compliment. 100% the success that we've had has been not because of me directly, but because of the great people that are doing really cool, innovative stuff, and that are really cool hobby people. So yeah.
Now that I gave you that one thing, here's the other thing coming down.
What?
So
the connection's getting fuzzy.
You guys have you guys have a YouTube channel and you don't have very many videos on it, I feel like you guys can do it because your videos are informative. I know that it's tough. Like I saw a couple of the ones where you're doing, where you're talking, and it's tough just one-on-one with the camera. But I think that there are ways you guys, because I mean, you know stuff, you know a lot of stuff, and I think people can turn to you for information.
Yeah,
So.
we have not invested as much into YouTube as we really should be, and I think Brian's another. You mentioned him earlier, but he's always on us like, hey, more videos. Here's some stuff you guys should be doing, and we just haven't done that. And I hope in the next year we'll be able to do a lot more of that. We've really seen our YouTube video viewership skyrocket over this year with people being home, and I think just how much more popular YouTube's becoming. But yeah, it's definitely it's where people are, and it's where people are getting their first connections with our hobby, and we want to make sure that we're setting them up for success. So yeah. I totally agree. Yep, we need to invest more into that.
Just call me and be like, Ben, what should we do a video on? I'll tell you. I'm there for you.
There you go.
Yeah. I've been doing videos twice a week and now 3 days a week.
Wow.
Last more than 2 years, 2.5 years we're doing them. So, and the third video for the Herp House Rock has been just since March and doing it every week.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Hey, if you guys, once we can travel, come on up to Michigan. We'll put you up, and you guys can do a video there, and we can show off some animals. That'd be cool.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then if you ever want to go like herping, a good place, Dave will take it because he knows a lot more about it. I'm in New Jersey, and I bring this up in every video. I try to get people to want to come to Jersey, but nobody ever really does because it's really not that great. I'll be honest.
Because it's New Jersey, man. It's New Jersey. It's not like it's Ohio bad, but it's just not great.
I would guess that Ohio has more herps than New Jersey does.
There are
I'm more
parts.
concerned about the people.
That is the rub there for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But so Dave, I feel like I'm peeking here. I don't know if
I think I just peeked.
It's getting dark at the bowling alley right now.
It's not getting dark. It's getting scary. Like,
wait, are you in New Jersey too?
Yeah. No, I'm in pretty much the meth capital of the world of Missouri. So, I just got to be careful where I'm hanging out, especially abandoned bowling alleys in the middle of the night. And also, disclaimer, I can't guarantee we're the meth capital of the state, but I do know we got a pretty good supply of meth. But, no, I mean, Josh, like I said, and, if we're all good, I don't mind wrapping it up, not because I'm not enjoying your company. Just, like I said, I think you were extremely informative. I think I've got a huge understanding of your business now. It's really cool to hear about the conservation stuff that you want to be working on. We will be talking about a pyramid scheme with little kids as soon as we get done here, because I got some great ideas for you on leaf collecting. And,
awesome.
yeah, like I said, it was a pleasure to have you on, man. I couldn't be happier. We got to get some of your links on there. I definitely think we should add some more pictures to the videos because I don't know what any of these frogs look like. And I know for a fact I'm not going to remember these scientific names because I'm a half a tart. So hopefully we'll take a look at some pictures afterwards and pop them on the video.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, so we really appreciate you coming on. And is there anything closing that you want to add, that you didn't get to talk about?
Nothing. I'm just really excited about our hobby's future. Like, I think our best days are ahead of us, and the more times in which do we get together and talk on the same level and not think about competing with each other, I think the better we are as a hobby. So appreciate what you guys are doing and giving the hobby a good name to people that might not be as connected as some of us are. So appreciate that.
We can only hope.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And, for anybody that hasn't already, like, share, and subscribe this, of course. Listen, you guys can, obviously, if you've already been listening, you're listening. You can do it on Google Podcast, on Podbean. I think we just got on iHeartRadio and, iTunes and, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 other different platforms over this past weekend. I haven't tested them to see if they work, but hopefully by the time this video is out, it's all working. So yeah, this has been great. And Josh, we really appreciate it. It's been fun. I want to stay in contact. We're going to definitely be coming out at some point. So it's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you again, Josh.
Yep. Take care, guys.
All right,
You
thanks.
too.